In a previous video, we discussed the importance of a trusted platform module on your host and a virtual trusted platform module set up on your virtual machine. Now let's do the final step in encrypting our virtual machine by installing the BitLocker program on our virtual machine. This also protects the VM even when the VM is turned off. So let's go ahead and go to our server manager as you see here and click on Add Roles and Features. Now it looks like I'm logged into a physical host, but I've actually logged into a virtual machine by using remote desktop. And we can tell that when we go to the top and you can see the IP address and the remote desktop bar at the top. Let's go ahead and click next, and we're going to continue on until we get to features. Now we have a couple of features here. The first one is BitLocker drive encryption itself, and we'll need to add the additional features that make that work. The second option is for the BitLocker network unlock, and what that does is it automatically decrypts any either virtual machine or physical host, whichever you have it installed on, in order to do maintenance or other type of work where having it encrypted would cause a problem. We're not going to need to worry about that at this time. Let's go ahead and just choose the BitLocker drive encryption and choose next. Now we'll go ahead and click install. And after a few minutes, the installation will be complete. Our installation is complete. We'll go ahead and click close, and we can see that we need to restart the server. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll check back in after the restart. Our server has restarted and we're just logging back in. Now the next thing we need to do is to make sure that BitLocker is working and enabled. So once Windows finishes completing logging in, we'll take a look at our control panel and make sure that it's working right. So now that we've installed BitLocker, we need to go into group policy to have our hard drive encrypted. So what I've done is I've remoted into our domain controller, and from here we're going to go to Server Manager, then Tools, and inside Tools we'll go to Group Policy Management. So what I want to do before we get group policy to work is I need to go into Active Directory users and computers and create a special organizational unit just for our one server. So let's go ahead and open up Active Directory users and computers, and let's go to the name of our domain, right click and choose new, and we'll choose organizational unit, and we'll put in here BitLocker servers. And click OK. Now we'll go over to computers and we'll move our file server 2 into BitLocker servers. Click yes, and we'll also move file server 3. Now the difference between file server 2 and file server 3 is that file server 2 has the VTPM enabled, whereas file server 3 does not. So we need to set up BitLocker in two different ways. We install them the same way through the server manager and the add roles and features, just like we did earlier. But when we go into group policy, it works a little bit differently. Let's go ahead and close that. And now we're going to go back to group policy, and we're going to expand our domain. Now we're going to go and create a new policy, but we're going to do it inside our new organizational unit that we just created called BitLocker servers. So right click, choose create a GPO in this domain and link it here. We'll call it BitLocker, and we'll click OK. Now we'll right click on it and choose edit. And this policy is only going to affect the two servers that we put into this organizational unit. If you want to affect a lot more than that, then just put more servers or computers into there. So now we need to go into computer configuration, then policies, then administrative templates, then go to Windows components. Then we need to expand this a little bit and go to BitLocker drive encryption, and then operating system drives. Now we're going to go over to require additional authentication at startup. We'll double click. And here we're going to choose enabled. Now, by default, this says to allow BitLocker without a compatible TPM. So as you noticed earlier when we were discussing creating the new organizational unit, I mentioned that one server had the TPM setup and the other one did not. So if we want to allow servers without the TPM setup in the settings in Hyper-V, then we need to have this checked. If we don't want to allow it, then we can leave it unchecked. And we have a few other options. We have allow TPM, require, or do not allow. And then we have configure TPM startup with the pin. So you can allow that with the pin, require, or do not, and configure TPM startup key. So we've got several different options here. At this point, we're only going to allow BitLocker with the TPM. So the one server is not going to work, but the other one will. But that's okay. So we're going to choose require TPM. Now we're going to allow the startup pin with the TPM, and we're going to say do not allow the startup key with TPM. And that's because we're not checking the box for the allow BitLocker without a compatible TPM. If we did have that checked and we were allowing that to happen, then we would want to have the startup key, which requires either a password or a USB key in order to start up the server and be able to log into it. Let's go ahead and click OK, close, close, and now we're going to remote back in to our server that has the VTPM set up. We're now logged back into our server that has the Virtual Trusted Platform module installed, and now we can go to Control Panel, BitLocker Drive Encryption, and we'll go ahead and enable. Click on Turn on BitLocker. It's going to go through all the requirements, make sure that it meets them before it turns on the encryption. Now we have the option to save our recovery key in case we have a problem to a file, or we can print it. Let's go ahead and choose to save to a file. And we'll just choose the default name, and we'll click on Network and turn on Network Discovery so we can get to one of our other servers that are on the network. And we'll save it in our ISO folder. Click Next. Now we have a couple different types of encryption modes that we can use. New encryption, best for fixed drives, or compatible, which are for drives that can be moved to another location, such as USB drives. Let's go ahead and choose the fixed. We can also choose to run the system check. Let's go ahead and do that. It's a good idea. And now the server must be restarted. Our server has been encrypted and restarted, but how do we know for sure it's encrypted? Well, it's a pretty easy way to check. So we just go down to our File Explorer and open that up, and then click on PC and take a look at our C drive. We can see a little lock on that. Now let's go to our control panel and open back up our BitLocker icon. And we can see that the BitLocker program is now currently encrypting our C drive. It's not completely done, but it is encrypting our drive. We also have the option to back up the recovery key again or turn BitLocker off. Now, once the encryption is done, this lock will change from an open lock to a closed lock, and then BitLocker will be completed. Knowing how to install and confirm BitLocker and Virtual Trusted Platform module are working correctly will ensure your virtual machines are protected in case of a physical attack on your network.